It's an honor for me to be here among friends and colleagues, and thankful for the long collaboration, and congratulations to what you have achieved. So I was asked to talk about the Sweetheart as a model. Sweetheart is a Swedish registry, as you can tell, and it may be considered a model for what can be done. I just wanted to show this picture. It's fascinating to see that, in fact, Sweden, as a fairly small country, has been leading in the Global Innovation Index for a number of years, together with Switzerland. In fact, before United States and the United Kingdom and other countries. And in the world of medicine and cardiology, you may not know that cardiac ultrasound, pacemaker, lidocaine, and heparin all were Swedish inventions that have really importantly transformed the way we are able to work. You may not know that the Celldegner technique of puncturing an artery is a Swedish invention. Sven Ivar happened to be my neighbor for many years, a very shy radiologist. And also the first stent was developed in our country by Hans Wallsten, but also developed in France. So the wall stent, as you may remember, those of you who have been here for a while. Another important invention that I want to come back to is the personal identification number that we have had since 1947. So every Swedish citizen has that number, and that's used for all interaction with the society, taxation, healthcare, everything. And that gives us an opportunity to follow all people from birth to grave. And we have a number of registries that I've shown in circles. So first is a population registry, all inhabitants. The first day you come to Sweden, you will receive one, at least a temporary one, until you have stayed for longer. After birth, it's within 20 minutes you have your number. And then we have the prescription registry, so all the pharmaceutical prescriptions are registered, and hospital admission codes. But on top of that, so-called quality registries. Quality registries because they are aimed to assess quality of care. Not research in the first place, it's quality of care. And there are multiple quality registries. Sweetheart is one, diabetes is another one, and there are multiple, so you can cross-link the registries to get a very rich phenotype of the patients. Currently we have more than 100 dedicated registry, disease dedicated or procedural dedicated registry. It actually started back in the 1970s, and it's fun because my father, who was an orthopedic surgeon, was one of the pioneers in hip prosthesis surgery. The coronary care registry started sometime in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, and the SCAR, as you refer to, coronary intervention, started sometime early 90s. And we merged them in 2009 into what we call Sweetheart. The idea it was at the time that we wanted to create something new, online registry available to everyone to provide reports to patients, to physicians, to nurses, healthcare personnel, and to the population. It's a vision that the Swedish Quality Registries Union had to make an integrated attempt to register, to improve the health of care. And so this did not come out well. But this is Sweetheart as of today. It's composed of several sub-registries. So all patients with a myocardial infarction are entered in the Rikshia portion. SCAR is interventional cardiology, but there are percutaneous valves, heart surgery, secondary prevention, cardiogenetics, cardiac CT, and biobanking, and on top of that, atrial fibrillation and heart failure. There are probably 400, 500 variables that are entered manually, and there's been monitoring. We've checked that the agreement with what you can find in the registry versus in the electronic health record has a very high agreement. This figure does not come out very well, but it's very easy to enter data on the platform. When I am on call, ST elevation myocardial call, the first thing I usually do is I enter the identification number, because then I get the person's sex and name and history displayed to me, so I can see immediately from the registry if the patient had prior PCI, prior CABG, diabetes, etc. So that is given to me as a bonus. And then there are auto-populated fields. So if I click creatinine, I get the estimated GFR, etc., and some calculated variables. And this is also a feature that is very useful. I don't know if you have it, but if a patient has received a stent in Stockholm in the morning and then has a stent thrombosis in the evening, that patient may come to my institution but had the stent implanted somewhere else. And then I see immediately from the registry that this patient was treated in the morning. And that type of information I cannot receive from any other sources. And then there's a mandatory question. I have to click on each of the previously implanted stents and check whether that stent is restenosed or stent thrombosed or open. So there's a complete check of all the stents that have been implanted. So it's clinically very useful. And we have worked very hard with incentives for the users. Incentives for the doctors so that they can see what they're doing, get reports, statistics. Incentives for nurses, for research assistants, for staff to online all the time check the quality. And we have developed these protocols so the patients and the leadership can print out how is my institution doing as compared to the other institutions in the country. And the patients can click and get reports directly. How is the care in this department as compared to everybody else? And I'm sorry that, let's see, this slide did not come out well. Can you go back and see if it projects better? If you can you go back? No. Okay. What I wanted to show you in my previous slide that doesn't display well, about 15 years ago, we wrote a visionary paper to be published in New England Journal of Medicine in 10 years. So it's a fake paper, but we said this is the vision. We want this to be published in New England Journal of Medicine in 10 years. In that paper we say that Sweetheart should be the new model. It will transform, it has, in 10 years, it has transformed healthcare. If you come back, it's appreciated, otherwise I go without it.
On peut aller une diapo en arrière, ou deux, s'il vous plaît? This is the one?
Okay, no, yeah, it's kind of funny. It's in the right corner, it should be displayed. But this is the New England Journal of Medicine paper. We said that Swedish healthcare system is an envy of the world because it's proven for the last 10 years that Sweden has succeeded to provide the best quality of care to the patients. Patients are empowered by the decisions, so they get information so they can choose. You can click, okay, that's okay. And the industry wants to come to Sweden and invest because of the quality of care and the abilities to get data. And the pharmacies and the manufacturers of products will come to Sweden, and the patients are empowered, and this will be without cost. This will actually be cost saving. So that was a vision 10 years ago, and you can see if I can click. And this has to be with the patient in the center. This is all about the patient care, but we have to also collaborate with industry, academia, payers and providers, and the government. And then at the same time we created what we call a quality index. So we listed the 9 most important guideline recommendations from the European Society of Cardiology guidelines. This is what you have to do in treating patients with myocardial infarction. You have to send them to a cath. You have to give them certain medication. These are class 1 recommendations. And then we ranked the hospitals. So the hospitals received a half a point or 1 point if they adhere to these recommendations by some standards. And it's interesting to see that the pickup was really fascinating. All the centers improved their quality of care, but you can see here that in blue line, those who were performing below average was picking up quicker than the average. So everybody wants to be the best, and that's natural. Competition is really great. So everybody improved their care, but particularly those who were underperforming. And this is, I'm sorry that the slides are just funny displayed, but the message that I want to convey, and you show the picture, and when we started in 2005, we weren't allowed to, we didn't dare to put the hospital's name, so the hospitals were named 1, 2, 3, 4, and we were criticized when we started to name the hospitals. But we said that the patients need to know how the hospital is performing. We don't say that the hospitals at the bottom are performing worse. We're saying, but you may you can consider what you can do better. There's always things you can do better. We don't blame them, but we say you have to go home and see what you can improve. And interesting is when we then looked at the data 2005, 10, and 15, all the hospitals improved their care. And at the end of the period, they almost reached top 9 points. They started down at 2 points, 3 points, and then they improved to 9 points. So there was an incredible rapid uptake of these medications. At the same time, we saw this dramatic reduction in mortality post-MI. I cannot say definitely that there's a link between what we do with this reduction in mortality, but I'm pretty sure that if we improve the quality of care for everyone, that is going to impact mortality on the country level. And I'm sorry, this is not displayed well either, but we did a very interesting study. We compared all patients in Sweden versus all patients in the United Kingdom. United Kingdom also have registries. And in fact, the mortality was 30% lower in Sweden as compared to the United Kingdom, which was very, of course, annoying to the UK colleagues. And we asked ourselves, why is that the case? And in the study published in British Medical Journal, that's not displayed well on the slide, we can show that in Sweden it was equal. So whether you go to a hospital in the south or far north, the quality of care is high. Whereas in the UK, it's excellent in London, in the large cities, but it's pretty poor in other places. So it's about equalizing and lifting the bottom to the top. And if you do that, it's a standard, and the mortality, the quality is defined by the poorest, by the lowest quality. So that has to be improved. And by doing that, we can show that in the paper, you can improve quality and reduce mortality. And this was a paper that was referred to the later president, Boris Johnson. He did many funny things and not good things in general, but he did use this as an argument to get more funding to the national health system in the UK. So that was nice. This is pretty bad, but because they're not coming out well. But now I want to turn to what we did with interventional cardiology. I had a slide preceding this one that didn't show up. But we started to registering all the stents in the country, and we showed by incidence that there were more myocardial infarction in the new drug-eluting stents that came on the market. There was a frightening experience to see that the rate of myocardial infarction was going flat with the old standard metal stents, bare metal stents, but for the drug-eluting stents, the lines were crossing and the MI rate was increasing. So we were really frightened. And we did this analysis and published in New England Journal of Medicine based on all patients in the country, every single patient, 20,000 patients. And we saw this observation, not randomized, but just an observation. We saw that the mortality was 30% higher with drug-eluting stents. This was back in, 2006, 2005, so it's a long time ago. But this was frightening. Is this true, that the mortality is 30% higher with these new devices? That may be a real important healthcare issue. And so we went to the FDA. The industry was, of course, angry and upset. But we talked to industry. I think I changed my behavior. I stented more short lesions, not the entire lesions. I avoided, complex 3-vessel disease, stenting everything, more focused. We also learned at the time to do better antithrombotic therapy, developed that. The industry went back and redesigned their stents, and 3 years later we could show that the mortality was no longer higher. And I think we changed actually interventional cardiology by this, and it made us a little bit famous for the registry. It was not popular at the time. I was debating with many of these colleagues. Martin Leon, who you may know from New York, he said that the SCAR registry contaminated with flawed data in an interview, in a debate, and Castrati said that this clearly shows how inappropriate registry studies are. And I debated with Patrick Sirois, and he said, "What is rotten in the Kingdom of Sweden?" He wrote an editorial in Your Intervention. Very serious. and he started saying that the discussion was between bare metal stents and instead of drug-eluting stents, he said death metal stents, which was also an exaggeration, of course. But we could follow then all the stents used in the country and show how they changed over time, and eventually we're able to show in this study that actually the newer generation was actually superior to the bare metal stents. We were actually reducing the risk of repeat revascularization, stent thrombosis, and myocardial infarction. And then we were following these stents over time. And this was really much used by the industry, by the providers, and all the, I talked to Terumo this morning. If Terumo came to Sweden, you had to check these figures, and the physician would say, well, your stent has to be at the bottom, otherwise we will not buy your stent. So it gave us a very powerful situation, and we could tell industry, well, you have to provide us with the best material, we just use them, and we'll see how it comes up. It's not randomized, there may be selection bias, there are issues, but in a way, everything, this has, I'm sorry it's not turning out well, here it's come, but it's become a gold mine, and I'm really happy to see that you are going along so well. You know that we recruited our current royal family from France in early 1818. Jean-Baptiste Bernadotte was taken to Sweden as King Johann III. And so our royal family is French, and I see this as a sign of an important French-Swedish collaboration. I look forward to how we can collaborate on observational studies, research, etc. The Sweetheart study is currently resulting in 50 to 70 publications per year, at least 10 to 15 doctoral theses written by the registry, and we start 2-3 new trials every year based on the registry. And in a moment I'll talk more about how we can randomize in the trial, which is a new option. So thank you very much.